this one is from my African Nigerian friends, I'll say. When we talk about going abroad, living the shores of Africa, Nigeria in particular, because I recognize, of course, that Africa is a continent. And it actually pisses me off when I hear people say, "Oh, I went to Africa. It's 54 nations, okay? You couldn't have gone to the continent. Say where you went." Anyway, I digress. So I want to say something different. When we hear the term as Africans, Nigerians in particular, and black folks anyway, going abroad spoiled a woman or made her become a way that was different from when she was in on the continent or when she lived outside of the West, right? Because abroad is typically, when we say that, we're talking about the West. Going abroad, going to the West, leaving the shores of Africa didn't spoil her, okay? At least not for the first time. Spoil. What it did was it exposed the deal. And I'm talking in the context of being an African, a Nigerian in particular, because this is something that comes up in our narratives. What I want to share is that this isn't a bash men conversation. It's not even a bash culture conversation. It's more a pattern conversation and exposing the training that undergirds it, right? Because when a relationship is built on one person who's over functioning, and I'm speaking from perspective of a woman in a relationship, maybe a marriage or maybe just a long time partnership, right? When the relationship is based or built around a person, the woman in this case, on the shores of Africa, doing things, maintaining the household, maintaining the kids, doing all the things, and another person being served. It feels normal until that pattern is disrupted or until the conditions change. And in this case, the condition that's going to be changed or that's changed is when she moves and leaves the African shores for the West. Because many women have been trained early to do all these things. The responsibility of childbearing, well, we actually carry the child, but child rearing, I'll say, home management, maintenance, all the different things have traditionally been placed on the shoulders of a woman, where we're anticipating needs, we're making life easier for everyone, and we're being praised and applauded for being a good woman, wife material. I remember I used to hear this term wife material. It grated my nerves, but I didn't really get it until now. And it's like, well, not now, but until much later. And I'm like, that is crazy. That is really just essentially a way of saying, a polite way of saying, maybe not even polite, that you are a well-groomed slave. I mean, that's just what it is. What does that even mean? I never heard anyone, and to date, I've never heard anyone say a man is um, husband material. I mean, it's thrown around loosely, and that's typically as a way to contrast when people say wife material. Then you say, "What isn't it? What about husband material?" But as a thing, I've never heard it, and it doesn't really exist. So, by adulthood, because of this training, a lot of women are doing the invisible work of bearing the emotional um, burdens of everyone. They are trying to keep appease men who may or may not want to be appeased, who shouldn't even be appeased anyway. They're trying to manage bringing up children and catering to the demands, the emotional demands that that entails. They're doing the domestic stuff. They're even when you have help, which is common in those parts. There's still a there's still the logistical side of managing the house helps that and the support that you get, and none of it is called that. So that a lot of men are they also grow up thinking that when they do things, they're assisting, and even the idea of babysitting, daddy daycare, what does that mean? They are your kids, you know what I mean? So the idea of helping or the idea of contributing is seen as help or assisting, not as a shared responsibility. And that's what I really want to talk about, that relationships in those parts are hardly ever were hardly ever built on, and even now, partnerships. They were built on female labor because the system hides this imbalance. The system supports the imbalance. You have families, you have aunts, you have uncles, you have neighbors, you have paid help, you have communities that contribute to this imbalance. So when a woman can be carrying all the responsibilities, is typically carrying all the responsibilities, all the load, and it looks like she's fine because of all of this that I mentioned. So think about putting a heavy, heavy bag on a table, and the table will not complain, but the fact that the bag rests on the table and the table supports the weight of the bag, you forget that that bag is heavy. And that's what it is. So now the context has been set for what's going on there. Now she moves for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not going to go into all that. She's abroad, she's in the West, and the table is no more. There's no built-in help. There's no village. There's no aunt. There's no cushion to help mitigate the load emotionally, physically, and all the other ways that she's carrying. And so both partners are working. Typically, life is expensive when you compare it to where they're coming from. Childcare is real. We know this. Time is tight. There's all the constraints around time, even though time is a man-made construct. But so the woman who was already carrying most of it, even with all the support, is now carrying the same thing, maybe even more because of the adjustments from there to here, right? The cultural adjustments and all the different things that relocating brings. So now all of that is on her without the other supports. So that's when the math doesn't start to math. And that's when she starts to say out loud, I need help. I'm tired. I can't do this. I can't do everything on my own. So for him who's benefited from that old agreement, that old arrangement, it may be seen as being rebellious. It may be seen as her changing. And I really hate that. I'm cringing as I use these words, but these are words that I have heard. So I want to deliver this with the words that have been used. It may be seen as her being disrespectful. She's changed, she's become difficult, she's assimilated the Western ways of being. But what's really happening is that that deal that benefited him is being exposed. And when a relationship depends on a woman's silence, her voice will always feel like a threat. So, this isn't about changing, it's about the conditions around her changing, and in a sense, forcing her to vocalize and verbalize the imbalance that has been there the entire time, but now she has no choice but to speak up. And so the conditions that have changed, or the changing conditions, have made what was previously invisible to everyone visible. It's now exposed, it's now, in the limelight. And that's really what's uncomfortable. That honesty, that saying this is no longer going to be the way that we're doing things. And you either contribute, shape up, or it's done, essentially, right? So if any of this is giving language or is bringing to the forefront something that you've been living or you experienced at some point and maybe were able to overcome it and settle and change things up, or it didn't survive, if you're a high achieving woman who's been carrying the responsibility or who carried it to the point where you couldn't, and your verbalization and vocalization of what was happening, your request for a change, a shift in the imbalanced relationship caused whatever it caused. I wrote a short letter for that moment. It's for that woman who's asking, is this it? Is this the way it's going to be? And the link to the letter is in the description. I would love for you to download it and read it. It's really like a 3-4 minute um, time max. And just share with me. You could come back to the post, you could email me what you got from the letter. I'll see you in the next video.